Alright, let's talk about one of the biggest political curveballs of the week, or definitely today. Donald Trump came out and said that he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. That's the headline, and it matters because it came out of nowhere. Trump's base, Israel's government, even his critics, none of them saw this coming. And here's the thing, when someone like Trump breaks from the script, it doesn't just make the news, it resets the conversation. So that's what we're digging into today. What exactly he said, why it matters, and how this single line could ripple across the region. So, let's start with what was actually said. At a press event on September 25th, Trump was asked about Israel moving forward with annexation, and he didn't hesitate. He flat out told reporters, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. I will not allow it. It's not going to happen." Then he added, "It's been enough. It's time to stop now." He also claimed he told Netanyahu the same thing directly. That's important because it wasn't some off-the-cuff remark. It was intentional. This was Trump going on record and drawing a line in the sand. So what really turned heads was how much this broke the mold. Trump has spent years branding himself as Israel's strongest ally. He's consistently backed Netanyahu, always reinforcing that United States-Israel relationship. And now suddenly, he's the one saying no. And that shift didn't just echo in Washington. Inside Israel, it sent a clear signal that Netanyahu couldn't count on unconditional U.S. support and backing anymore. And globally, it forced diplomats to reevaluate Trump's stance in the conflict. It wasn't just a comment, it was a credibility shock that had ripple effects that extended far beyond that initial press room. So let's talk about 3 reasons why it was especially surprising. First, as we already said, Trump's pro-Israel history. This is the same president who moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognized Israel over the Golan Heights. He has a record of giving Israel some of its biggest diplomatic wins, which is why hearing him suddenly oppose annexation feels like a total reversal. Second, Netanyahu's coalition. His right-wing government has been pushing hard for annexation, with the expectation that Trump would back them. Instead, Trump essentially shut the door, despite his close personal relationship with Netanyahu. That's a direct clash with the people Netanyahu relies on most. And third, the international angle. The global consensus has always been against annexation, calling it a violation of international law. Trump aligning himself with that consensus, after years of rejecting international pressure, is the real curveball. It's what made this announcement impossible to ignore. Now let's talk about the history of the West Bank a little bit. To really understand why annexation is such a flashpoint, you have to look at the history and just take a walk through it. Starting in 1967, during the Six-Day War, this was when Israel captured the West Bank from Jordan, and this is when the occupation began. In 1977, the first Israel settlements were established, laying the foundation for decades of expansion. In 1993, the Oslo Accords gave Palestinians limited self-government in parts of the West Bank, but Israel kept overall control. Then, in the 2000s, during the Second Intifada, settlement growth accelerated even further. In 2005, Israel pulled settlers out of Gaza, but kept its grip tight on the West Bank. And today, there are over 600,000 Israel settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. That's the backdrop: decades of conflict, negotiation, and expansion that makes Trump's statement so explosive. So now, let's touch on that international context a little bit more. Zooming out and stepping back to the global stage, it's clear that Trump's words don't simply exist in a vacuum. This isn't just about the Israel and Palestine conflict, it's about how the entire world reacts. The United Nations has been very clear. Annexation would violate international law. The European Union has threatened political and economic consequences, and Arab states, especially Jordan and Egypt, warned that it could destabilize peace treaties that have held for decades. So where does Trump fit in? On this slide, you see the 4 angles: diplomacy, alliances, domestic politics. I do apologize for diplomacy being spelled wrong. I need to correct that. And posturing, political posturing. Trump's statement touches on all 4 of those angles. Diplomatically, it signals a rare U.S. alignment with global opinion. In terms of alliances, it strengthens ties with Arab partners. Domestically, it gives him a talking point to appeal to moderates back home. And of course, it could also be posturing, a big headline move without the follow-through. The point is, It's not just about one quote. It's about how the quote ripples across every level of politics, local, regional, and international. So now let's think about the possible reasons as to why Trump would take this stance. Let's break it down into 4 possible reasons, exactly how you see here. First, diplomacy. Trump may be trying to use this position as a form of leverage, signaling to both sides that he can be the broker who resets negotiations in the Middle East. Second, Arab alliances. Opposing annexation wins some points with countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan. These are nations whose cooperation the U.S. needs on everything, from oil to security. Third, U.S. politics. Let's be real, this plays at home too. Positioning himself as someone who can take a balanced approach appeals to moderates and independents, without losing his pro-Israel base entirely. And finally, posturing. See, this could just be optics. Trump knows how to make a headline. Saying no to annexation gives him the look of a deal maker, even if he doesn't intend to enforce it. Put all 4 pieces together, and you get a full range of motives, from serious diplomacy to a political theater. So what does this mean going forward? Well, there's 4 clear scenarios on the table. Scenario 1, temporary delay. Trump's announcement could simply be buying time, slowing annexation down without stopping it, just to ease diplomatic pressure. Scenario 2, a bargaining chip. Trump may be using this as leverage, signaling to Netanyahu, if you want my support, you need to give me concessions elsewhere. Scenario 3, it's a policy shift. This will mean Trump has genuinely changed courses, moving away from his old stance because he thinks the political or strategic cost of annexation are too high now. Fourth, domestic politics. At the end of the day, this has come down to U.S. elections, appealing to key voter blocs. Jewish Americans, independents, evangelists could be driving this so much more than foreign policy itself. So which one of these is true? It's the big question. An answer may decide if Trump's statement was a turning point or just another headline. So now let's just touch on the Israel reaction. How would this land in Israel? For Netanyahu, this is a nightmare scenario. His coalition leans heavily on right-wing partners who live and breathe annexation. Those groups expected U.S. support, and now they're watching Trump essentially close the door with this recent statement. And by doing this, he's putting Netanyahu in a sort of political bind. If he is to push forward with annexation, he risks clashing with Washington and losing critical backing from the supporters that he has used for so long. But if Netanyahu pulls back, he then risks angering his own base back home in Israel. So it's essentially a no-win situation for him. He's pressured by his coalition on one side, and he's pressured by the United States on the other. That tension could essentially destabilize his government and force him into compromises that he doesn't want to make. In short, words that Trump said didn't just spark headlines abroad, they could have lit a fuse under Netanyahu's own political survival. Slide 10. Let's talk about the Palestinian reaction. The Palestinian reaction is much more complicated. For Palestinians, Trump's announcement sparked a rare moment of hope in a very dark time. To hope that maybe, just maybe, the United States was shifting away from always backing Israel no matter what. But that hope is layered with deep skepticism. They've seen these type of promises before. They've watched settlements expand while peace talks collapsed. So the question becomes, is this a real policy shift or just more political theater? So for Palestinians, the stakes aren't abstract. They've lived every day, checkpoints, land disputes, economic struggles. That's why these words hit so hard. If they're genuine, they could open up a new path. If not, they're just another letdown in a long history of broken promises. And the U.S. leverage here is very important too. Nobody can ignore this. America has more tools than any other player in this conflict, and they're all on this slide right here. First, foreign aid to Israel. This has been touched many times, but billions of dollars flow to Israel every year, giving Washington enormous influence. Second, military assistance. From advanced weapon systems to intelligence sharing, the U.S. is Israel's backbone when it comes to security. Third, UN veto power. The Security Council, America has shielded Israel time and time again from resolutions condemning settlements or occupation. The veto is one of Israel's strongest shields. And finally, political influence. Whether it's shaping negotiations, pressuring allies, or setting the tone for global diplomacy, the United States' power extends far beyond money or weapons. So when Trump says no annexation, it carries weight. Because behind those words are levers that can change the entire playing field for everyone involved. The regional implications. Let's just widen the lens for a second and think about the entire Middle East. See, Trump's announcement didn't just hit Israel and Palestine. It essentially shakes the entire region. Let's look at Jordan and Egypt. Both of these rely on fragile peace agreements with Israel, and annexation would have thrown those deals into chaos. But by blocking annexation, Trump may have just saved those governments from facing explosive domestic backlash. Then there are the Gulf states. You've got Saudi Arabia, the UAE, others who have recently normalized relationships with Israel. For them, this is very huge. They want closer ties with Israel, but they also can't be seen abandoning the Palestinian cause. Trump's stance gives these nations a little bit of breathing room. So the regional implication is that the balance of power in the Middle East is essentially shifting depending on how seriously Trump enforces his words. So this is deeper than policy, this is leverage over alliances, this is peace deals, and this is the entire regional order. So where does the story go from here? There are 4 big pressure points to watch. You got settlements. Every bulldozer that breaks ground in West Bank is a test of whether Trump's words have teeth. If settlement expansion continues unchecked, then annexation might just happen by another name. Second, Arab leaders. Their reaction will tell us a lot. Do they rally behind Trump's stance, or do they hedge and look the other way? That choice would define the strength of the Arab position moving forward. Third, U.S. policy. The White House can't just drop a line like this and walk away. Every clarification, every signal, every action will be scrutinized to see if it backs up Trump's declaration. And finally, the local response. On the ground, Palestinians will decide whether to treat this as a moment for cautious hope or as a hollow gesture. Their protests, their diplomacy, even their silence will shape what comes next. So yeah, this is the crossroads. Words are on the record, and what follows will decide if history actually shifts. So, the big picture. Here's where we land. Trump's statement against the West Bank annexation, it's not just about a line in a press conference. It's about the ripple effects on Netanyahu's coalition, on Palestinian hopes, on U.S. diplomacy, and on the fragile balance of the Middle East. Every player, from Washington to Ramallah, from Amman to Riyadh, is recalibrating their next move. I'm sorry if I pronounced some of those names wrong. I wrote the script out fast, wasn't really stopping for anything, but I will improve. But anyway, that's what makes this moment so pivotal. Not just the words themselves, but the power they carry when the world is already on edge. See, because in conflicts like this, words can either be the first step towards peace or the spark that sets off another fire. So the question is simple, but massive. Was this Trump drawing a real red line, or was he just creating another headline? A red line? Or a real red line, or a headline? And that's what we'll be watching. And the world will be watching too. So yeah, that's the breakdown. If this gave you a clear picture of what's happening, do me a favor, hit that like button so more people see it. And subscribe if you want straight, no spin breakdowns of global politics. I cover these stories the way they actually affect people. No distractions and no agendas. So if you are tired of the noise and just want the real story, stick around. The next video is already on the way, and trust me, you are going to want to see this one.